is download that cable raw data .sql.zip file. We need to unzip it, and then we need to take the zip file and import it into the database. So make sure MAMP is running, make sure SQL Pro is up, click on your query window, and drag that SQL file, again the unzipped version, over to here. And again, this is just another export. It has some SQL in here to drop the table if it exists. We're going to create a new table called cable raw data, and then we're going to insert some data into that table. So once you have that, go ahead and hit run all queries. And you do want to be doing this with us because the tables we create in this exercise we'll be using in later examples. Once it runs, hit Command A to select it all and just get rid of it. Over on the left here we have this new table called cable raw data, and if you take a look, it's something that you might see on like a TV Guide or a Bright House or a Nielsen's. It has a show name, it has a station, and it has a genre and a premiere date. And we only have 14 rows, but you know, if we were Nielsen's, we'd have thousands upon thousands or hundreds of thousands of rows for all the shows that air on all the channels across the world. What we're going to do is take this data, because it's not really in the best format. Biggest thing is it doesn't have a primary key, and there are columns that are repeating over and over again. The problem with that is, if this was coming in from a form, something like, well, we'll start with show name. The show name is unique, so we would probably just let someone type this in if it was coming from a form. But would you really want someone to type in the station? Well, what happens if someone types in ABC and someone else types in American Broadcasting Company? Well, they're the same station. You know, the law believes they're the same. It's the same station on your cable box, but now they have two different names, so they'll appear as two different stations. Or someone puts Disney while someone else puts Disney Channel. Probably something like station is something you would have them enter in from a drop-down. And anytime you do that, that's a good hint. If it's coming in from a drop-down, you want to go ahead and separate it to another table. Same thing for genre. I don't want to have movies or shows with action, then some of them have adventure, and some of them have adventure spelled wrong, and then some of them have action and adventure, action slash. They all should be the same genre. So when they were entering, if someone was entering this in, you would go ahead and have them select action adventure from a drop-down. Don't let them free type it. But premiere date, that's fairly unique. Maybe you'll have a calendar helper, but for the most part, station and genre are the two fields that we need to separate to other tables. So the point of this exercise is we're going to take this one table, cable raw data, and we're going to separate it to three tables: a listing table, a genre table, and a station table. So let's start off by creating the station table. I'm going to go over and hit the plus button down here, and the table name is station. Leave the table type as INNODB. We will always be using INNODB in this course. There are plenty of other types in here, memory, ISAM. ISAM does not support relations. It doesn't support foreign keys. It's made for a different type of database or a different type of structure. We're not dealing with that. INNODB is going to cover all of our needs. So hit add, and we end up with a station table on the left here. It says the field is ID, and it made it a primary key. This is how it starts. So here's the things we need to change. Don't delete this column, just double click and rename this station ID. We do want it as an integer of 11. That way it matches up with what we have here in our diagram. But I don't want it unsigned. We want it signed because these numbers are only going to be positive. Leave the PRI here. That's the primary key. Remember, if we get the little yellow key here, that's the primary key. And the goal of a primary key is just to be the unique identifier for that table. And then you see over here it says auto increment. We're leaving that as is because we're going to let this number auto increment, which means if I add a station in here and don't include the station name, it's just going to grab the next highest number and insert it. We don't have to worry about this column. I need to add another column. You can either hit the plus button or you can double click in the second space here. And we're going to add station name. And that is a var of 50, and we'll leave the rest alone. And that's it. We've created a new table. At this point, though, the table is empty. It doesn't have any stations in here. So what I want to do is go look over at cable raw data and say, okay, here's some stations: ABC, CBS, and AMC. Well, let's go over to station. I'm going to double click. I'm going to leave the station ID as is because it's auto incremented. I'm just going to type in ABC and hit enter. Notice it auto populated that. You could also hit the plus button down here, and I'll tab it and do CBS and hit enter, and there's CBS. And I can go in here and I'll add AMC. And ideally, if this was something we're actually going to use production-wise, we would have to go through and get all of the unique values from here and populate them in the station table. So at this point, and we're going to be using this in several labs in the future, we're going to be creating a table that just has an ID field and a name field, and the name field is just the unique values of whatever that is. In this case, it's station. So again, we would normally insert all the other ones, but for this example, 3 will do. The next thing we need to do here is genre. So over here, I do have what the genre table should look like. It's a genre ID as the primary key, and a genre name as a varchar 50. So I'll hit the plus button, type in genre. I did create the genre table already. And I'll just go take a look. It is a genre ID with a length of 11, primary key incremented, and a genre name. So I'm going to go ahead now and go over to content. And let's bring a couple of genres in. So action adventure is one of them. I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to go over to genre and paste that in there, and it gets assigned to 1. And maybe I'll go get horror and insert it over here. And I'll do just the third one here, family. And again, if it was production, I would go ahead and keep inserting all the unique ones in here. We don't want this to repeat, because think about it, this is going to be used for a drop-down in a form. This is how you would populate a drop-down on a web or a mobile form. So you wouldn't want to have action adventure, action adventure, action adventure. It's like, well, which one do I pick? No, these should be unique. So station and genre, these are also called, you'll hear them known as lookup tables, because we go ahead and look those up. The next thing we need is a listing table. So I'm going to go over and hit the plus button and do listing, again as an INODB, leave the rest as is. And I know the first column here is listing ID, so I will rename this listing ID. I want to uncheck that, make sure you uncheck that, leave it as the primary key. Next field I want, I'll just pull this over so we can see it, is listing, listing name as a varchar of 50. I'm going to do station ID as an integer. I'll do genre ID as an integer. And premiere date. But that is a date to match up to here. Okay. So, again, if we go over to content, there is the table, but it's empty. All we've created is the structure. Now we need to actually put data in there, but we're not quite done yet. Over here we have 2 of these lines between these tables. Those are called relations or foreign keys. And here's how we create them. When you look at 2 tables, let's take station and listing, they both have the station table in them. Let's go back to there. They both have the station table in them. Station ID, excuse me. So that's the column that is going to be related to each other. And again, I like the way to think of this is if I insert into the listing table, meaning I create new data, and I put a value into the station ID table, it should already exist in the station table, station ID. Okay, so let's go over here. Let's make sure we select listing. The reason why we have to have listing selected is we always have to point at a primary key. So if we have station here, station ID here, and station ID here, we're pointing at the primary key. So since this table has that primary key, we need to work on or alter this table. So we got listing, we're going to click on relations, I'm going to click the plus button here, and we're going to say in the listing table, the station ID, it should reference the station table, station ID. And don't worry about these rests for now, let's just hit add. And there we go. And we can do the exact same thing for genre. If I put a value in the listing table genre ID, it should already exist in the genre table, genre ID, and I'll hit add. Okay, so at the moment we were able to create the structure, and we do have data in both station and genre here. So let's insert a few into listing. And if I look at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., well, I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm just going to copy and paste that. But they're on ABC and they're on Action Adventure. Well, if I want to look up the station ABC, I can go over to the station table. See, ABC is a 1. Remember that. And then Action Adventure, I'd go to the genre table. Action Adventure is a 1. Remember that. And the date is 9/24/2013. Well, let's go to listing. I'm going to let listing ID auto increment. I'm going to insert the listing name from the show name. The station ID was a 1 for ABC. The genre ID was a 1 for Action Adventure, and the premiere date was 2016-09-24. And look, we have those nice little circles here, which means those values are related to another table in here. Now, here's something. We previously clicked on like the arrow, and it took us to the station table and said that's ABC. I only have ABC, CBS, and AMC in here, 1, 2, and 3. If I go to listing and I say that's on station ID 99, I'm going to get an error. The reason is we're violating that foreign key, that relation, because whatever value I put into the station ID must already exist over here as a station ID. Same thing goes for the genre. Any value I put in here, I can't put 99 in there. It'll error out. Again, because if we look at the genre table, right now the valid answers are 1, 2, and 3. So that's how we normalize the tables. Now at this point, we would normally disregard this table. We're going to leave it here for now for this exercise, but normally we would transfer all of the data from this table over into the 3 tables we created. I'm not going to do it all manually. Later on, we're going to see a shortcut to get that done. But we would then move all the data into these 3 tables because this is how the database wants it. It wants the repeating fields off into a separate table, and then we join them or link them together with foreign keys to that one main table.